I am Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. I've made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. All right, so let me be real with you guys for a second. I was scrolling through some finance stuff the other day, and I saw this retirement planning tool that said, hey, you have an 87% probability of success. And I just sat there staring at my screen thinking like, cool, but what does that even mean? Like, seriously, what does 87% success actually tell me about what my retirement is going to feel like? And the more I dug into this, the more I realized that this whole probability of success thing that everyone in the finance world loves to throw around, it is way more broken than I ever realized. So today I want to walk you through what I learned because honestly, it changed how I think about money completely. Let's start with the basics because I want everyone to be on the same page here. When a financial planner or a retirement calculator tells you that you have a 90% probability of success, here's what that actually means. They ran your plan through thousands of simulations, different market returns, different sequences of returns, different economic environments. Basically, they simulated your retirement a bunch of different ways, and in 90% of those scenarios, you did not run out of money. That is it. That is what success means in their world. You did not hit zero. Your bank account did not go to $0 before you died. Success. And look, I get why that sounds good. It sounds precise. It sounds like a real answer. When life feels uncertain and retirement feels like this giant, scary thing that is 30 years away, having a number like 90% feels comforting. It feels like someone did the math so you do not have to worry, but here is the thing that nobody tells you. You can have a 90% probability of success and still spend the next 20 years being absolutely stressed out about money, like full-on anxiety every time you check your portfolio stressed. And that is the problem. That number does not tell you what retirement is actually going to feel like. It does not tell you how much you are going to have to cut your spending if things go bad. It does not tell you whether those cuts are going to be painful or just annoying. It just says, hey, you probably will not go broke. Congrats. That is it. And look, I have been there with this kind of thinking in my own life. When I was 22, I was living paycheck to paycheck. Actually, worse than that. I was living on credit cards, spending money I did not have on things I did not need. I had this vague idea that someday in the future I would figure out my finances, I would start saving, I would invest. But not right now. Right now I had rent to pay and a social life to maintain and new shoes to buy. And the funny thing is, I thought I was being fine. I was not in debt. Well, I was, but like not scary debt, just credit card debt that I was absolutely going to pay off next month, which of course I never did. And the reason I bring this up is because that kind of thinking, it is the same kind of thinking that the finance industry uses when it tells you have an 85% chance of success. It sounds fine on the surface, but it is completely disconnected from reality. So let's talk about what the actual researchers have found, because this stuff is genuinely fascinating. There is a guy named David Blanchett who has done some incredible work on retirement spending. And one of the biggest things he points out is that the traditional model treats retirement like a pass-fail test. You either run out of money, that is a failure, or you do not run out of money. That is success. Clean and simple and completely disconnected from how real life actually works. Because here's the thing, running out of money by $1 when you are 95 years old, that is not the same thing as running out of money by $500,000. When you are 70 years old, those are completely different situations. One is basically a rounding error at the very end of your life. The other is a life-destroying financial disaster, but the model treats them exactly the same. Both are failures, both get marked with the same red X. And that is just dumb when you think about it, because what actually matters is not whether you ran out of money or not. What matters is how much of your lifestyle you were actually able to fund. If you funded 95% of your desired lifestyle and then had to cut back a little in your last few years, that is not a failure. That is a great retirement. But the models say failure because you hit zero in some spreadsheet somewhere. Blanchett also found something else really interesting. Retirees do not spend the same amount every year. Most models assume your spending stays basically flat, just adjusted for inflation every year. But in reality, that is not what happens at all. Most retirees spend more early on in retirement. They are traveling, they are doing things, they are living an active lifestyle, and then as they get older, spending tends to go down. Priorities shift. You might spend less on travel and eating out and more on healthcare, but the spending overall actually goes down in real terms for most people. So if your retirement model assumes perfectly flat spending, it is not modeling real life, it is modeling a spreadsheet. And that is a huge problem because you might be saving way more than you actually need based on a model that does not even reflect how people really live. And this is where things get really interesting. There is another researcher named Michael Kitzes who has done amazing work on this. And one of the best things I have ever heard him say is this: if your plan has an 80% probability of success, well, maybe that just means there is a 20% probability that you will need to adjust your spending. So instead of looking at a potential adjustment as a failure, you just plan for it, you set up guardrails, you say, okay, if the market goes down by X amount, then I will adjust my spending by Y%. And a 5 or 10% adjustment is something most people can live with. That is not a failure, that is just life. That is being an adult and making adjustments when things change. I love this because it is so much more honest than just saying you have a 90% success rate and calling it a day. It actually tells you what might go wrong and what you would do about it. And that is something you can actually plan for and feel prepared for. When I was trying to get my finances together in my early 20s, I had no guardrails. I just spent whatever I wanted and hoped it would work out, and it did not work out. I racked up credit card debt, I had no emergency fund, I was one bad month away from a real crisis. It was not until I set up some basic rules for myself that things started to change. I said, okay, every paycheck I put this much into savings first before I spend anything else. If I want to buy something expensive, I wait 48 hours before pulling the trigger. Simple stuff, but it gave me a framework, it gave me guardrails, and that made all the difference. Kitces also talks about something called overspending risk and underspending risk. And this is a huge shift in how we think about retirement. Because a high probability of success does not just mean safety. It often means you are spending too little. You are sacrificing your lifestyle today unnecessarily. You are protecting a future version of yourself at the expense of your current self. And that is a real cost that nobody talks about. The hidden cost of being too conservative with your money is that you miss out on life right now. I see this with people I know. Honestly, they are so scared of not having enough for retirement that they never enjoy their money today. They skip the vacation, they drive the beater car for 10 extra years, they eat the same cheap meal every night, and sure, they retire with a big pile of money. But at what cost those years of their life that they spent just grinding and saving and never enjoying anything? They are not coming back. There has to be a balance. And this connects to what another Nobel Prize winning economist William Sharpe has said. He calls retirement the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. And he reframes it less as a math problem and more as a happiness problem. He wants to maximize the expected utility of income over time. In plain English, that means having a smooth, stable income path is more valuable than a bumpy one. Small adjustments are way easier to handle than big, shocking cuts. Essential spending like food and housing and healthcare matters way more than discretionary spending like travel and eating out. And this leads to some powerful insights. A massive spending cut later in life is not the same as making small adjustments along the way. Cutting travel is not the same as cutting healthcare, and having a lower probability of success on paper might actually lead to a better quality of life overall because you are actually spending and enjoying your money. Let me tell you about another concept that blew my mind. It is called the Guyton-Klinger guardrails approach. Basically, instead of spending the exact same amount every year adjusted for inflation, you adjust based on how the market is doing. If the market has a bad year, you freeze your spending. If it gets really bad, you take a small cut. If the market does well, you give yourself a raise. And the whole point is to avoid making huge, painful cuts all at once. You make small adjustments along the way so you never have to make a big one. And this just makes so much more sense to me than the traditional 4% rule approach. The 4% rule was groundbreaking when Bill Bengen came up with it in the 90s, and it is still useful as a starting point, but real life does not work that way. Real people do not wake up every January 1st and say, okay, let me increase my spending by exactly 2.5%, because that is what inflation was last year. Real people spend more when they feel good about the market and pull back when they feel uncertain. Real life is messy, and this is also where guaranteed income becomes so important. Blanchette's research shows that when retirees look at guaranteed income streams like Social Security or a pension, they are willing to spend about 80% of that income. But when it comes to money from their investment portfolio, they are only willing to spend about 50%. Why? Because guaranteed income feels safe. It feels spendable. It is a check that shows up every month no matter what the market does. But a portfolio that feels like something you have to protect. If you have $1.5 million in investments, that feels like a nest egg. It feels fragile. You do not want to touch it because you are scared of running out, and I get that. I really do. When I first started saving money, I had this mentality where every dollar I saved felt like a protective shield. I did not want to spend it on anything, even things I actually needed. I was so scared of going back to where I was before, broke and stressed and living on credit cards. And it took me a long time to learn that saving is not the goal. Living a good life is the goal. Saving is just the tool to get there. And if you are so focused on saving that you forget to live, you are missing the whole point. So here is what I have learned from all this research and from my own experience. The goal of retirement planning should not just be to survive, it should be to live well. To design a life that you actually enjoy, not just one that does not end in financial disaster. And that means asking different questions than the ones we usually ask. Instead of asking, will I run out of money? Ask, what will my income actually look like over time? Instead of asking, what is my probability of success? Ask, how stable is my spending? What happens if things go wrong? Can I live with those adjustments? Are the adjustments I might have to make going to be painful or manageable? And the answer to those questions is going to be different for everyone. For some people, a 10% spending cut would be devastating because their fixed costs are already too high. For other people, a 10% cut is annoying but totally manageable. They can skip a vacation or eat out one less time a week, and it is fine. The key is to know yourself and to build a plan that matches your actual life, not some theoretical model. Let me give you an example that makes this real. Imagine two retirees. Both have $1.5 million in investments. Both have the same Social Security benefits. Both have a 90% probability of success in their retirement models. On paper, they look identical, but their actual retirements are completely different. Retiree A follows a fixed 4% withdrawal strategy, no flexibility, and their guaranteed income does not cover all of their essential expenses. So when the market drops 25%, they are in trouble. They are not just skipping skipping a vacation. They are selling assets at a bad time. They are cutting into things that matter. They are stressed every single day. Retiree B has Social Security covering all of their essentials. They use guardrails for their withdrawals. They adjust their spending gradually based on market conditions. When the market drops, they reduce their discretionary spending by 5 or 10%. They delay the big trip for a year. They eat out a little less. It is annoying, but it is not devastating. Two different retirements, same numbers on paper, completely different lived experiences. And that is the whole point. The numbers matter, but how you live matters more. So if you are in your 20s like me and retirement feels like this distant impossible thing, here is what I want you to take away from this. Start building the right habits. Now, save something even if it is small. Get your emergency fund in place, get your spending under control, but also do not be afraid to enjoy your life today. Find the balance, because the goal is not to die with the biggest pile of money. The goal is to live a good life from start to finish, and that means making smart choices with your money without becoming a miser. When I look back at where I was at 22 versus where I am now at 27, the biggest change is not how much money I have saved, it is my mindset. I used to think about money as this scary thing that I did not understand and did not want to think about. Now I see it as a tool that helps me build the life I want. And part of that is understanding that the traditional rules of personal finance and retirement planning are more like rough guidelines than actual laws. They are starting points, not finish lines. The retirement research world has been shifting away from just looking at survival probabilities and toward designing for actual experience. And that shift matters. It matters because it puts the focus back on the person, not the portfolio, on the life, not the math, on happiness, not just security. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you look at a retirement calculator or a financial planning tool and it gives you a probability of success number, ask yourself, what does that actually mean for my life? What would success feel like? What would a course correction feel like? And can I live with that? Because at the end of the day, retirement is not a spreadsheet problem. It is a life problem. And the goal is not just to make it to the finish line with a positive balance. The goal is to have lived a good life along the way. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. I hope this gave you something to think about. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Have you ever thought about retirement planning this way? Are you more scared of underspending and missing out, or overspending and running out? I would love to hear where you land. If you got something out of this video, hit that like button. If you are new here, consider subscribing. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.